Hello everybody, and welcome to Greg's Vintage Workshop, where I'm working to restore history one piece at a time. Tonight we're going to take another look at the 1960 to 1961 Phillips B5X04A radio that belongs to my son-in-law. We're going to be doing part 2. In part 2 I'm going to do some low-hanging fruit, which is mainly the electrolytics. We'll get the main filter cap restuffed and replace the electrolytics. We're going to do whatever low-hanging fruit we can get hold of. So without further ado, let's get started.
Okay, I just got through desoldering the wires underneath from this main filter capacitor C1, C2. Is actually only held into the chassis with two little hold-down screws. They tighten down on the lip and hold it in place. So I done desoldered it. We're going to lift it off. I'm going to restuff it. I'm going to see if I can grind the edge off of this so I can retain this lip, since this is what holds it in. And we'll see what we can do. I was going to put some terminal strip underneath, but unfortunately there's not enough room because the replacement 50 are too big to go underneath there. There's just not enough room, so I'm going to restuff it. Okay, so I got that ground off. Now if we can get this apart. And that came off good. Alright, good. Now, that's rubber. That's the lead. I don't really want to screw this up too bad. But let me see. You can just see me stabbing myself with this razor blade knife, which would not be good. Let me do this where I'm not trying to do it in the camera, so I don't cut my finger off, and I'll come back when I got it pried up. Okay, I got it pried up. Yeah, it came right out. Alright. See what I can 3D print to make this work. Okay, so I borrowed a capacitor restuff design idea from David Tipton as far as making these little split gears and making them so they spread when you go in, when you insert the capacitor into it, and then it'll fit into the can nice and snug. And I've dressed the 247 microfarad at 450 volts to replace the 50 microfarad at 300 volts that were in that can originally. I've got the can polished and cleaned up, so I'm going to get this installed in here and I'll bring back. Alright, I got that pushed down inside there. I don't know how well you can see that, but she's all the way down. So now all I got to do is drill the original end cap here, get it in there, push the wires through, and then take this over and see if we can bend this edge back over to retain it. Alright, there it is. I think it turned out pretty good. I got the two leads from each capacitor. Well, let me rephrase that. So I got each lead from each capacitor on one of the terminals, and then the common ground wire to the chassis. The negative from the caps are both on that same wire. So should be ready to go in, but I'm not going to put it in right this second because I've got to do something with the tuning capacitor. If we get a little closer, I'll show you. Alright, so the tuning capacitor is like it's missing a screw. I mean, it's loose. I mean, I realize they're mounted in rubber, but I think that's a little crazy. Try and move the dial string and it like shifts the thing. So I got to figure out what's missing. But one of the wires is right here that solders onto it, and that'll obviously just be much easier if that capacitor is not in there yet. So I'm going to take care of that tuning capacitor, see if I can figure out what's going on with it, and then once we get that fixed, I will put the newly stuffed cap back in there. Okay, so this is the bottom, and the tuning capacitor is in this vicinity right here. If I get something I can point with, I'll point out. There's a rubber grommet right here, and it's missing its screw. This is a mounting screw, this is a mounting screw, and that one's missing the mounting screw. So I'm going to have to pull one of these out and see if I can figure out the screw, and see if I can find something I've got that'll work as a replacement. I'll probably go ahead and change these grommets as well. I'll have to take the wires off. Got one here, that one and that one are by the screws. I got one here, got more over here. I'll have to see what we can do to get that loose without tearing something up. Okay, so I got lucky. I got the completely broken in half piece of grommet out of there. It was missing the spacer. I got lucky. That's the spacer. It came out of the one I removed. This is the one I had on from a leftover from another radio. I think it'll work fine. And I'll use a 632 screw, and I think we'll be alright. I'll just replace all three grommets. I got these. This is the one that came out of the missing hole. You can see half of it's gone, but it appears to be the same. Yeah, it might be a little bit thicker than this one. Yeah, let's see what we get. Since I'm going to change all three of them, I think that this will be fine. Now getting it in there might be a real pain in the butt. I don't know if I can do it where you can see, so let me see if I can get in and bring you back. Alright, I got all three bushings replaced. This one, and the missing one, and that's the replacement screw and washer and spacer I used in there. I tell you, those old ones were they were like rubbery, but they were brittle and busted all to pieces. That's why it was that loose. I mean, here's the remainders of what I pulled out of it, and they're just a mess. Should be more solid now. Alright, now I can go ahead and get that big capacitor can back in there. So I just got that all hooked back up, and while I was in the process I checked some of these resistors, and the three reds, which are 2200, measured exactly 2200. The three oranges, that should have been 33K, measured right at 33K. I think it was 32 and some change. Green over here, I didn't check that one. I'll probably have to check that one in a minute. I wanted to show you this though. This is the next electrolytic I'm working on. And the interesting thing, what holds it in is a piece of insulated wire. A wire loop. How you at? Oh, there we are. A wire loop in there. That's interesting. Now the one I'm going to have to put in there is a radial. So I'll have to come up with a way to mount that. I don't like that loop thing. I don't think I can use that, but we'll see what we come up with. Okay, I 3D printed a bracket to secure the new 10 microfarad of 450 volt electrolytic that replaces this 8 at 300 that was stood in there vertically. There was no way to really do it without a bracket, so I had to create one, but I think it works pretty good. Okay, so now we're going to go after this 16 microfarad at 250 volts, and we're going to replace it with an 18 at 450 volts. Unfortunately, I don't have one in a axial, so we'll have to make this work. Okay, so I got that 16 microfarad replaced with the 18. I printed out another one of my little cap brackets like I used on the other side. And the mounting holes, I used a little zip tie and tied it to this multi-strand insulated isolated cable here. So I think it's in there pretty good. I think that's going to work well. Okay, so I'm testing this 160 microfarad at 10 volt electrolytic capacitor. As you can see, it's testing 55.5 microfarads, so it's definitely bad. Now what I've put together is a pair of capacitors in series to get close to the 160. So let's see what we come up with. Okay, so I put together in series 470 microfarad and a 220 microfarad, and I'm getting 153, 154, so that's close enough to 160, even though it's slightly under it. It's a hell of a lot better than the 50 some that was in there, so we're going to go with that. The 160 is at 10 volts. On this one, I think the 470 is at 25 and the 220 is at 16, so voltage wise we should be fine too. Okay, so I got the 470 and the 220 microfarad in series together right here to replace this one right here that was in there, the 160. Okay, so I decided changing this 10 at 64 volts with this 10 at 160 volts. This one actually did not test bad. It tested 10, but since it was the last electrolytic in the set, I figured I'd change it anyway. That way they're all new. Okay, so I got that C49 10 microfarad capacitor electrolytic put in there in the proper orientation as far as polarity. So now I'm just going to continue to spot check resistors, which so far everything I've checked has been like dead nuts on. Now there's an awful lot of additional normal capacitors in here that I haven't checked yet, but I'm inclined to go ahead and put a cord on this thing and get some new tubes in it and power it up and just see what it does before I just willy-nilly start replacing all the capacitors. But let's see what we get. I might disconnect a couple of them, check them just to see what a couple of the easy ones, just to see what they test out at. You know me, I can't leave things alone. Okay, just for grins and giggles, I decided to disconnect half of this .068 capacitor and check it. And what we got was 74 NF, which basically makes it 0.074 microfarad, which is within 10%, and that's what these other capacitors are, is within 10%, what it has marked on them anyway. With that makes me feel good about going ahead and powering it up with these existing ones that are in here.